Okay, looks like we have a good group. Should we give maybe one more minute?
Sure.
Okay, I think we're good to go.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the CLAFA Tenant-Based Housing Assistance Committee. My name is Maria Raza, and I'm the chair. I'm with the Housing Authority of the County of San Bernardino. And we'll start with introduction. So I'll hand it over to Janelle Beverly to start.
Thank you, and good afternoon. My name is Janelle Beverly. I am the Director of Policy and Research. And I'm going to tag who I see, Pam Taylor.
Hello, everyone. I am Pam Taylor. I'm the Director of Housing Choice Vouchers at King County Housing Authority. And I am going to tag Chris Walsh.
Hey guys, Chris Walsh from Indianapolis. I'm the Deputy Executive Director for Strategic Partnerships. And this is my first one of these committee meetings. Very excited to be here. I'll pass over to Brandon Crow.
Good morning or afternoon, depending on where you're at. Brandon Crow, I'm the Director of the Housing Choice Voucher Program at the Minneapolis Public Housing Authority. And I will send it over to Stephanie.
Hello, I'm Stephanie. I actually just got to CLAFA. I'm the new Housing Is intern. And so I just wanted to step into this meeting just to see about all the wonderful work you're doing. And so I will tag Tracy.
Thanks, Stephanie. Good morning, everyone. Excuse me, apologies in advance. I'm having camera issues. When I turn my camera on, I am sideways or upside down. So at the risk of being a distraction, I will just keep my camera off. So anyhow, my name is Tracy Mann. I am the Director of Housing Assistance with the Los Angeles County Development Authority, which is formerly the Housing Authority for the County of Los Angeles. So I will pass it on to Robin Walls.
Good afternoon. My name is Robin Walls. I am the Vice President for Voucher Programs with the Houston Housing Authority. It's nice to see everyone. I'll pass it to Dinsiri.
Hi, Robin. Hi, everybody. My name is Dinsiri Fakru. I'm the Executive Director for Policy and Special Programs at the New York City Department of Housing Preservation and Development. And I'll tag Lillian.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Lillian Harris. I'm Vice President for Leased Housing with the New York City Housing Authority. And I'll pass it over to Camille.
Thank you. I'm Camila Knoll. I am a CLAFA staff member and I'm the Health Policy Manager here. I will pass it over to Ian.
Hey, everybody. Hi, Maria. Hi, Sonia. Ian Davey, Deputy Executive Director at Home Forward in Portland, Oregon, in Multnomah County. He, him pronouns. Great to see everybody. I think I'll pass it to Andrea if you haven't gone yet. Keep it in the Pacific Northwest.
All right. Hi, I'm Andrea Lazaga, Director of Policy and Strategic Initiatives at Seattle Housing Authority. And I'll pass it to Pam if you haven't already gone.
I've already gone, so I will pass it to
Thanks,
Nathan. That's okay.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nathan Sims. I'm the Executive Director for the Housing Authority of Prince George's County in Maryland. I'm going to pass it. I'm going to take my partner locally, Gloria Bowens.
Sorry, I didn't take it off mute. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Gloria Bowens. I'm the Chief Compliance Officer for Prince George's County Housing Authority. Nice to meet everyone. And I will pass it on, if they haven't gone already, to David.
Hey there, David Gleish from the Boston Housing Authority. Oversee the voucher program here in the admissions department. And I joined a little bit late, so I'm not sure who's gone and who hasn't. So I will see if my partner across the river has gone yet. Hannah, have you already introduced yourself?
Nope, thanks, David. Hannah Balk, I'm Director of the Leased Housing Program here at Cambridge Housing Authority. People keep moving around on my screen. Who hasn't gone yet? Donna?
Hello, how are you? My name is Donna Green. I am the Deputy Manager at the Housing Authority of Prince George's County. And let me see who I can pass it on to.
Dory Beck. Dory Beck.
Okay, Ms. Beck.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dory Bett Nolan. I'm the Director of Policy Planning and Housing Mobility here at CMHA. I did also join late, so maybe George, Guy?
You would do that to me anyway. I was hoping I was going to be forgotten about. Anyway, my name is George Guy. I'm the CEO, Executive Director of the Fort Wayne Housing Authority in Fort Wayne, Indiana. And I am driving right now, so I don't know if it'd be a good idea for me to say who's a participant or not. I think pretty much everybody's gone, but so if someone can help me out in terms of who to pass it on to, I appreciate it.
Sure, I'm happy to help you out. I have a few people. I just want to see if we're missing Andreas Manriquez. Okay, Cheryl Burns. All right, Janine Burrier. Sorry if I'm pronouncing it wrong. All right, Jeff Davis. Kyle Hansen. Right.
He won't be on anymore. I actually took his place. So
lovely. Thank you. Latuita Smyers. All right, Miss Margarita Lars. And that's all I have for my list. Did we miss anyone? All right. Hand it back to you, Miss Maria.
Great. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us this morning and or afternoon. I'm going to hand it back over to Janelle for the announcement section of the agenda.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, I forgot that was my next part. So just a couple announcements on some upcoming webinars. We're really excited to be hosting. We will be hosting on this Thursday, the CLAFA Mobility webinar. It is open, it's free. It's open to all CLAFA members and NTW. I'm sorry, I'm getting some feedback from somebody's line. Okay, I think it was resolved. The CLAFA Mobility webinar on November 18th is from 2 to 3:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The registration link was included as a part of your agenda. And then we're also hosting a joint EHV and communications working group. We're really excited about that. We have a pretty big crowd for that to talk about landlord outreach efforts and then also continue the work of the normal EHV working group. That's going to be held on November 30th from 1 to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'm going to put out another shameless plug for the EHV working group. If you are interested in participating, feel free to email me directly and I'll get you the contact information. And then lastly, we have another COVID webinar coming up for CSH presentation on blending and braiding finances. That's tentatively set for December 6th from 1 to 2 p.m. We'll be sharing more contact information and registration details soon. Thanks, Maria.
Great, thanks, Janelle. Okay, so if you can join those webinars, and there's always some great information to learn. And even if you're not part of the existing mobility demonstration, I think it's still beneficial information for, as some of us are struggling with the utilization in our voucher program. So there could be some ideas that could be shared that come from that. We'll move on to the next section of our agenda, which is recent legislative and regulatory updates. And I'll hand it off to Steve for the Build Back Better Act and federal housing appropriations updates.
Yeah, sure. Hi, everybody. Steve Holmquist from Reno and Kavanaugh and General Counsel of CLAFA. So I was asked to briefly present on what's in the Build Back better act in terms of tenant-based assistance. So I just will give a brief outline of that, and maybe others from CLAFA in particular can chime in on that. So it's pretty amazing news. We don't have anything in hand yet, but just as on the public housing side, for the first time in a long while, there's really a tremendous amount of potential resources for tenant-based assistance, by which I mean just, not renewals, which we've been doing, that's really all we've gotten for many, many years, decades even. For the first time in a long time, there's the prospect of actually increasing the program through incremental housing assistance. And so there are a couple of different buckets of money for that. The first would be $15 billion with a B. So that's about 50% of the size of the overall existing program. So a 50% increase there alone. And that would be incremental voucher assistance for extremely low income families. So families under 30% of area median, obviously generally the highest needs families. So that 15 billion would be spread across, kind of new vouchers, and then renewals of those vouchers, and then some administrative fees. What is not in the bill, and I don't know if Sonia, somebody who's done the math at CLAFA on this, but the $15 billion will need to be broken out among those things in some way. And those funds would be, HUD is directed in the bill to allocate those funds to PHAs each year for 5 consecutive fiscal years, beginning in FY22 through FY26. And then they are directed to do that through a formula that takes certain factors into account. So certainly there will be a lot of play, if this comes through, in terms of what that formula looks like. And then there's another $7.1 billion, also incremental assistance targeted to those at risk of homelessness, survivors of domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault and stalking, and survivors of trafficking. And again, that money is spread across the incremental assistance, and then renewals and fees, again, for those 5 fiscal years. And HUD would do a separate formula for that based on some factors that Congress lists. So those are the big ticket items, just over 22 billion new dollars there. And then in addition, there's $1 billion for tenant protection vouchers. And that would be just a massive increase to that account from what we've been getting in the past. And tenant protection vouchers are used for a wide range of activities, but in particular for replacement of demolished or disposed of public housing units. And they could also be used for project-based replacement of those units. And so this has been kind of a battle in recent years where PHAs go through the Section 18 demo dispo process and then come out on the other end with tenant protection vouchers. There's been a lot of pressure on that account in recent years, and always a question whether the money will be there. And it appears, this would be a huge amount of funds that would facilitate those transactions. And I think it also indicates that despite some policy differences with the House Financial Services Committee in the past, they clearly are open to sort of a conversion that's not RAD, but it's really a conversion of public housing assistance to Section 8 assistance, through this vehicle, where you would take the tenant-based assistance and then project-based those vouchers. They clearly call out that that's allowed here. And then there are a few other buckets of funds, $300 million for competitive grants for mobility-related services, and then $230 million to facilitate the use of voucher assistance through things like owner outreach and retention activities, incentive payments, security deposit payments, things of that nature, and also incentives for landlord recruitment. So, that is kind of the outline of it. Again, a huge increase if we got that. We still don't know. Watch the news and see what's happening. I think we're all hopeful that the housing funds will stay in there, as to the end. So that's kind of the report, and happy to take questions. Or Sonia, if you or someone from CLAFA wants to fill in any details, go ahead.
Sure, and Janelle, you'll correct me if I'm wrong. I think the last estimate was 400,000 vouchers. Of the incremental vouchers, 300 to 400,000 vouchers. I'm sorry, on the incremental side. I don't have a number at my fingertips on the homeless vouchers. And I would just add the increase in the service money, a recognition of what's going on in EHV, on additional support services being needed. So that's a very important recognition. But just the scale of it, again, I would reiterate, is large, is very large. And just to a note of very guarded optimism, that we think the fight around reconciliation on the Senate side is going to be more around general size of the package. We haven't seen these numbers taken as a target and been attacked directly, as opposed to paid leave and some of the other issues. And the White House economic advisors are leading on their messaging around how important the affordable housing components are in the bill. So I think that speaks to some level of confidence that it won't be a huge target. Thanks, Steve.
Yeah.
And only thing I would add to that overview, and thanks, Steve, as well, is we on last Wednesday sent out a request to members to provide an update on how these huge investments could potentially impact your agency. So if you haven't seen the email, haven't had a chance to reply, please let us know. But we're looking to get that feedback directly to help shape our agenda for the next year.
Okay, so I have to put my 2 cents in on this. Sorry. So we are trying to get some really concrete, specific examples about how this money would affect your community. X number of more households served, reducing your carbon footprint, employing more people, getting people off your waiting list, anything that, really speaks to the tangible nature rather than the theoretical nature of what this money could do in terms of what your estimates are on the number of households served. And sooner is better than later. Thanks, Janelle.
Thanks, Cynthia. Do we have any updates as well on the fiscal year 2022 appropriations? Steve, did you want to jump in, or should I take that?
I guess I can say a word, only that I guess we have, so we have the House bill from July that passed, and that had the voucher program at a little over $29 billion. So that is about a $4 billion increase from the final FY21 number. And then on the Senate side, just in the last month, October 19th, they came in at almost 28 billion, a little lower than the House, but also, significant increase over 2021. So that looks good as well. I think maybe Sonia will comment on this. At the end of the day, there might be an interplay between kind of what we get in FY22 versus what the final numbers are in the Build Back Better Act. It's all money. We'll take it either way. But they're, if they're looking for ways to cut, maybe they shift some, into 22.
That's right, Steve. So this is the order of the play now. Act 1 is getting Building Back Better passed in the Senate. Some people are, while high on optimism, thinking that it'll be done this week. Next comes, it's not clear that they're going to be able to deal with the FY22 appropriations before the continuing resolution expires on December 3rd. So there is talk of extending that. And of course, we also have the debt ceiling issue. We've heard from authorizers and appropriators. So what's unusual in the reconciliation process is the authorizers are really driving the show on both the numbers and the legislative text, where typically money issues would be appropriators. So the appropriators have basically said they will look again at their bills after the reconciliation bill has passed. So the House had 125,000 vouchers roughly in that increase that Steve mentioned, and the Senate doesn't match that. But the discussions we've had is that if there is a big increase in the reconciliation, it's not clear that we would see another additional increase in appropriation. So I think they're really going to balance that out. Again, I think that's true of vouchers and public housing funding generally. But the big show is getting the reconciliation bill passed, and then appropriations kind of coming back to fill in gaps and see what they need to do. But both bills were very robust, I think, increasing admin fees, increasing renewal amounts, increasing capital fund, and operating funds. So that's a December show, late December.
Great. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Sonia. This is really helpful. So it sounds like the continued message is get ready. And I think your request for information is timely, and that we should be preparing and thinking internally, at our PHAs, if we were to receive, it could be an allotment the size of EHV of vouchers, whether it's ELI vouchers or an expansion. What would we do? How would we, we'd pull families from the waiting list, also looking at public housing infrastructure. And so we should be, talking internally about these plans, and please communicate that information to CLAFA so that they can help us advocate and have some specific examples as to how we are going to use the funding, because we definitely need it. And so we need to be continuing to communicate that information to Congress as well, and to HUD.
And Maria, it's Steve. Sorry to interrupt, but one other thing I forgot to mention, in the formula that HUD is supposed to run, Congress directed HUD to look at PHA capacity in terms of how they would allocate and distribute the money. So that's definitely something to think about. And maybe we decide to help HUD in some way determine what capacity means, so they don't get it wrong, and there's sort of a misallocation of resources. So keep that in mind too.
Thank you, Steve. And I think that reminds me of something else to ensure that each PHA is having consistent communication with their field office and their HUD representatives. So as an example, our HCV utilization has dropped. And I know we talked about this a few months ago, but it's important to communicate why to the field office so that they understand that it's not for lack of need, it's for a variety of reasons that may be different across different PHAs. That may be capacity of units, landlords, recruitment. There's so many reasons. And so we want to make sure that we communicate those so that HUD is aware and can also communicate that information to headquarters as to why our lease rates may have dropped. Okay, thank you. Okay, so next on our agenda, we have some updates on the CARES Act waivers.
Yeah, sure, I can do that, Sonia, if you wanted me to. Sounds good. All right. And correct me if I got any of this wrong if you have more later intel. But we are in the final, HUD is in the final stage, just to say, of drafting guidance on quote unquote return to normal operations. That notice will include tips and reminders on how to come back into compliance, associated deadlines, and information on waivers that would be extending beyond 12/31. They're expecting that inspections will take the longest time to come back into compliance, so they're keeping that in the back of their mind. PIH is talking with ODC about the timeline to give individual waivers. However, they do not want housing authorities at this stage to be requesting them. So information to be coming, but don't submit individual waivers. We're not there just yet. They will not be doing compliance reviews, as that's at least the latest intel we've received, and that the notice will include some slack time for returning back to normal. They're working on an expedited process for those individual waivers, and so hopefully we'll see that come into fruition. And the last meeting we had with them, they indicated that they did not anticipate that the CMAP waivers would be included to end. However, FOS is a little bit more difficult because it's statutory. And we're expecting the timing for that notice to be released sometime in December. Sonia, did I miss anything? Okay, awesome. And I can jump right on.
I'm sorry, just one more thing on CARES Act reporting.
Yes.
Don't be surprised to hear the portal's not done yet. Maybe the portal will never be done. No, they say it's going to be done, and you'll only have to report once in an aggregated amount for everything that's spent as of December 31st. And they'll be putting out more information. It's not really done yet, so I'm not going to say it's done until they're still testing it. But I think there is an awareness that this should be as simple as possible. They do plan to do follow-up surveys next year on the use of the waivers, because there was no way for HUD other than the MTW waivers that required approvals from HUD, what housing authorities were doing with that. So expect more contact from HUD, follow up on that earlier next year.
And then I can pause for any questions related to that before moving into EHV, if that's okay, Maria. I'm not seeing any hands. All right, so EHV updates. The EHV dashboard is live now, so if you haven't had a chance to check it out, it's on HUD's website. It's updated daily to include updates on leasing, issuance, and unit utilization, and information on voucher awards and funding by PHA. So I would advise you, if you have a EHV allocation, I would definitely take a look at that dashboard to make sure information is accurate. Likewise, if you're an administrator of EHVs, you should have received an invitation to conduct a survey through the Urban Institute. They're doing a research project on how communities are using and targeting EHVs. And the extent to which you're leveraging additional service dollars. So if you got that request, go ahead and complete it. I know there were some PHAs that had concerns that there were phishing attempts. It's an actual survey, so please fill it out if you got it. And then we talked a little bit about the joint EHV communications working group meeting on November 30th. So I won't go back into that. At our last EHV working group meeting, we talked about leasing of EHVs and statistics. And nationwide, we're still seeing that EHV leasing is a bit slower as expected with all of the challenges that you all encounter on a daily basis. So I don't have to tell you that. But the things that we're hearing, while referrals are up in some areas, they're still slow in others. And some PHAs are still receiving incomplete applications from their COC partners. So that is making an impact. Nationwide, I checked the data today, vouchers issued and on the street are about 16,252 of the 70,000 vouchers. They've leased about 3,642 with a utilization rate of 5.21% nationwide. There were some questions about where, what areas are receiving the largest utilization rates. And we got that data from HUD, and at that time, it was about a week and a half ago that we got this data, so bear that in mind. But at that time, only 24 PHAs had an EHV utilization rate of greater than 50%. And most of those PHAs were mid-size, some of them, 8 of them were large and very few of them were small. And 75% of them had small EHV allocations. Another thing that we learned during our working group for some of the agencies within the working group that had a high utilization rate was that they were leasing their initial EHV vouchers for families that were currently in place under other subsidy programs that met the criteria for EHVs. So we anticipate to see some dips there as we continue going along, but there is a consensus that some areas are receiving political pressure to lease in place families first that are had experienced homelessness. And then we also received some clarification from HUD on the EHV recapture and reallocation timing. In the PIH notice 2021-15, don't quote me on that, I got to double check the number, but it talks about the timeline for recapture and reallocation. And we got confirmation from HUD verbally that they are looking to begin that process starting on December 31st, 2022. For housing authorities, they got their initial allocation in July. So that's 18 months after the effective date of your award. There were additional PHAs that got awards after that. So basically take your award start date and add 18 months, and then that's the date to keep an eye on. I did get confirmation that HUD is aware of the challenges related to EHV leasing and is constantly looking at their utilization rates and keeping that under consideration when it comes to recapture and reallocation. The process, of course, is not intended to be punitive, but we will continue to keep a close eye on that. And then finally, HUD noted that if there are any housing authorities that received EHVs and are is experiencing increased per unit costs, there is an allocation available for those housing authorities, and instructions on how to request additional funding is on the EHV website. So that's what I have for EHV. Are there any questions?
Janelle, this is Nathan. I have a question. Has there been any conversation at the department level in terms of helping the continuum of care, for the jurisdictions? Because for us, we're pretty much situated to be able to deliver, but I mean, this is a huge amount of influx for them. I mean, for us as a county, we received 139 EHV. And so, for us, I mean, that's not bad, but the continuum of care, I think in terms of their screening process and being able to do that, like we're kind of at their whim. So I wanted to know, like, is there any discussion around those particular points to really kind of see what we are offering to try to help as best we can, but the referrals come from them. But we know how this plays out too, we get the blame. So, but at the end of the day, we just want to make sure in terms of if there is discussions around the capacity piece for them.
Absolutely. And welcome, Nathan, to the fold. Yes, that's a great question. So they actually came out last week with an update that the department is looking at COC referral rates, and they're monitoring that information. But we've been constantly in their ear about that to make sure that they're talking with the COC partners. And some PHAs have taken the step of doing joint technical assistance with their COC partner, and that seems to help a little bit. But it's certainly something that the conversation needs to continue. Sonia, do you want to talk a little bit about our conversations with NAN? That might be helpful as well.
Yes, I think there are a couple of points. Well, you're definitely not alone in this issue. So I think virtually everyone here is in this room has faced this challenge. A couple things. I think you should let the HUD folks know. I know Danielle Garcia and her team, they have office hours that you're encountering this. They have stepped in other cases on this with the CPD side at HUD, who oversees the COCs, to try to push that along. Other housing authorities have been able to negotiate other referral sources, and that's been very helpful, that are not necessarily included in COCs. And so, everybody on this call can talk more detail about that. But I would definitely get HUD aware of that. The other aspect that Janelle's referring to is we've been working with the National Alliance to End Homelessness, and they're really, one of the major national groups where the COCs are represented and are active there. And we've had a couple of joint meetings now to do problem solving and, well, a little kvetching and complaining, but also, what are the common problems here? And we're hoping, and we brought in some, the state and health officials and Medicare directors. So we're trying to build a bigger coalition around the support services. We know that's an issue for COCs, and have a more steady and reliable source of services that can be committed upfront to EHVs and to enhance the capacity of the COCs. So this is an ongoing issue, and we'll be focusing on the national level, but I think also making sure HUD is in touch with what your challenges are on the other side. And what they do have technical assistance money, and they are allocating it. I don't know, they have mentioned it a couple of times directly, working directly with housing authorities, but this may be a case where you want some joint technical assistance money to move that forward.
Nathan, we reached out to our HUD field office, and they included CPD, and they're currently providing technical assistance to our COC and our CES provider as well. And we'd be happy to share that information with you as well.
That would be great. I appreciate that. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Okay, great. Thank you, Janelle. Okay, discussion on tenant protection vouchers. So we heard that there's a proposal to completely increase this amount to up to $1 billion. Right now, the current budget for tenant protection vouchers for 2021 is 116 million. So that would be a drastic increase. And so want to put some questions out to the group. Have you applied for any tenant protection vouchers? And if so, for what purpose? Are you thinking about it? Maybe in light of there being some additional funds.
So we have not, but we are, as we go through our repositioning efforts. As was brought up before, I think that this is a really interesting conversation in terms of a couple of different things, the TPVs, but also RAD to Faircloth, or Faircloth to RAD, excuse me, because one of the things that we have been talking about here is using various options in terms of the various blends for RAD. I mean, we have Faircloth units, and we will have more through this process. And so I think it does bring up an interesting conversation in terms of having those vouchers and having Faircloth, because if you have Faircloth, for us, I think it is a good thing to be able to say, well, we're not just going to put it into the properties that we redevelop, because we are going to do some new construction, but I do think it's a tool that we can say we can build new units, and where are they located, and try to leverage those. So I'd be really curious in terms of where these two conversations really kind of lead us, because I think it'll be very helpful. And we're trying to get things to, frankly, we're trying to get things to pencil. And so, and you have to make a decision, a real-time decision between, do I go RAD and use RAD rents, which may be lower, or do I do tax credit and use tax credit rents that are going to typically be higher? So just creating that plan to be able to do what we need to do.
Thank you, Nathan.
Well, this is a huge number, and it reflects HUD's dependence on using the TPVs for redevelopment and expanding affordable housing supply. So if you're not thinking about it now, and I think the RAD blends are where it's, they're doing more experimentation with that, but right, I don't know, the trifecta or whatever it is, you know, the Faircloth units, the TPVs, and, you know, some tax credits on that, where maybe you could really put together a development program. Steve, I don't know, Holmquist, you have thoughts on that?
No, I think that's right. Everybody's mixing and matching. I just think it's interesting. I sort of alluded to it before there was RAD. All right, what everybody did was try to go through demo dispo and get the TPVs and then project based them, same thing, but the rents could be higher. And then RAD, it worked well for a lot of agencies, but it actually capped the rents below what you could have done. And now we're kind of coming full circle in a way, especially with the RAD blends. It's sort of the tail wagging the dog. You call it RAD, but sometimes it's as little as 20% RAD and the rest of it is TPVs, which is great. And then the only other comment about Faircloth to RAD is because the new units that are produced are, well, they're considered new under the capital fund formula. The RAD rents only include the operating funds, and so there's no capital component. So those rents are even lower. So I think if you're doing Faircloth the RAD, you do need to find a way to increase revenue and cash flow in the project, to build the units, because you might end up actually cross-subsidizing back to the Faircloth the RAD units, since again the rents are only include the operating funds.
I'll offer one thought, kind of beyond the upfront long-term financing picture. We, just for some context, have been converting our entire portfolio primarily through RAD, but Section 18 were available, and leaning on TPPs. We have nearly fully project-based all those resources to maintain that housing in our community. The one thing we're running into right now is we have a senior property that has maybe 80 units, and we're converting it to RAD, which means that folks don't have the flexibility of moving from the property until a year after conversion. And so it means we have to, and we're doing a full tear down. So we're moving this very vulnerable population, relocating temporarily, and saying in 2 years, you age 78, let's say, can come back. And then after a year, you can take your tenant-based voucher and leave if you'd like, through RAD mobility. That is incredibly cumbersome. It would be great if we could say, hey, HUD, we need a special allotment of TPVs given this scenario, and just say to folks up front, you can leave, you can certainly come back, but you can leave permanently with your TPV, recognizing that it's very difficult for anybody to move at all, but especially for you given age, et cetera. So I'm not sure, this was a question I sort of checked in with Janelle about. I'm not sure if folks are seeing more flexibility from HUD, and if there is a path to make an application beyond the sort of blend options that have seemed to free up in the past few years. But it is just another example of how the sort of strictures of the programs are running into issues, or are causing us to run into issues. Because what we're thinking about now is just giving all those folks like a preference on the wait list and giving them HCBs, which obviously draws from our internal resources to do that.
Well, I think this is an open question for HUD when we've asked them about their allocation plans for TPV. Dominique Plum said they were clearly linked to the recapitalization strategy and focusing on highest needs properties. So I think we're going to see, I would predict a much broadening of the blend deals where it's not, as Steve says, RAD driven, even though that may be a small part of it. That we'll see more blending and smoothing over of all these things to make these things work. But also HUD's indicated that TPVs are going to be focused on these highest needs properties. And it's a Secretary Fudge priority to improve the conditions. I mean, this is for her all about why she wants inspections continued. Her frame is really where are residents living and what conditions are they living in, and we're responsible for that. So I think thoughts you have about the use of TPVs, particularly in the scenario you raised about special needs populations and relocation issues, we'd be very interested in understanding, because we do want to build a framework that is broad and flexible for these various resources.
Thanks, Sonia. And yeah, we we have one property left to transfer, and we're moving forward and under RAD, and then we'll be all transferred of our public housing portfolio. But something definitely to look at, especially in light of the higher per unit funding that's available under tenant protection vouchers. Ian, you made a comment, should I continue to pursue this, even though there's not an open window for that? I would say yes. Right now we're pursuing, not related to TPVs, but post-closing RAD transfer of assistance, and had said we don't have the mechanism to do that. We still kept pushing forward. We prepared a plan and we're still pushing forward. They initially denied the plan, and so then we asked for technical assistance and said, okay, here's the project. How would you do this? And they said, we don't know. They were challenged as well after we asked for technical assistance. So now they've reopened it, and hopefully they'll approve it, but we got to know at the beginning, and we just kept trying. And I think the approach was, well, help us figure this out, because it doesn't make sense. It's not in the best interest of our community. And I think changing the approach to more of a partnership, I think, has helped.
Maria, I'm sorry, could you say what that was again that you're going for?
We closed a RAD deal, and we want to do transfer of assistance after we close the RAD deal.
Thank you.
Yeah. And yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me and I can share.
I'm sorry, I just found that very interesting what you just said, and I'm trying to puzzle through what that is. So the subsidies are assigned to a development, you do the RAD conversion, and then you decide you're taking out what X number of project-based assistance to another site. And then those others become market rate or unsubsidized or just voucher holders?
We're going to convert them to home ownership.
Ah, okay, interesting.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Welcome. Okay, so next we have, just to stay on task here, we have a discussion on the Inspire demonstration. So I'm going to hand it over to Janelle, and I know we have a guest also.
Thank you. So just some quick updates from the last meeting with HUD on Inspire. They've started doing those Inspire inspections, but there is no formal Inspire scoring methodology yet. The current demo sites are not being currently scored, but once scoring begins, those scores will be used for informational purposes only. So there's no intent to use the scores prior to completing the formal regulatory rulemaking process. So you can rest at ease if you were in the demonstration. And then there will be a focus on remediating health and safety items within the required timeframe that I would expect us to think would happen anyhow. But I'm going to ask Mr. George Guy to talk about his experience. He's one of the first PHAs to have that Inspire inspection. And then once he is done, I'd just like to get a kind of quick poll of how many members on this call are currently participating in the demonstration.
Well, thank you, Janelle. I got to tell you, I'm not at my location yet. So if you don't mind, I'm going to keep my camera off because I want to be safe, right? Well, no, I just will say this. Good afternoon again, everyone. I think we were the first housing authority, we were told when they got here, to go through the Inspire demonstration. It was interesting. It wasn't, they were very pleasant when they did the inspection. We only had 2 deficiencies, which were non-life threatening. So we had 30 days to mitigate. But we went through the process, and they did a recap with us afterwards, with our field office and with the folks over at Inspire and React. And again, they were very pleasant, had a lot of questions. They wanted to get our feedback about the process. What did we think? But from what I understand, that, when they did the actual inspection, they were very knowledgeable. Again, they were trying to work through some of their challenges as well. But it appeared from my maintenance maintenance and modernization construction coordinator, that he felt as though he felt better about, and he's got years and years of inspections. He felt that it was in terms of the way that was handled, in terms of the inspector and everything else, and the process, it was a little bit easier, just in terms of communication and really being able to work through some of the challenges. But my reflection from a high level though was they just had a lot of questions. They were really wanting to know what was our experience in terms of the debriefing and those type of things. So we just we mitigated those issues. They did follow up to make sure that we got everything in the system in terms of how we resolve those issues. But other than that, it was pretty straightforward. And again, we were surprised that we were the first ones. Actually, we didn't know until they got here. So, but yeah, so that was pretty much it. Again, it was a pretty good process for us.
Great, thank you. And then I'm just going to pause for a couple of questions for George. And then if you are participating in the demo, please just put a quick note in the chat for our record keeping purposes. So any questions for George before we move on? All right. Oh, he put his camera on. Don't be unsafe because of us. Awesome. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
So it doesn't look like anyone on this in this meeting is anyone participating in the Inspire demo?
Good to know. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, George. Okay, Janelle, are we ready to move to the FSS participation? Okay, so this is really interesting. You know, we talked a lot about asset building and focusing on asset building for our families. And it was interesting to see the low number of families across the public housing and housing choice voucher programs that are participating in FSS is actually less than 3%. And it seems like such a great program for our families to participate in, especially with the focus, you know, on asset building and helping our families transition through. So we have another guest joining us, Jimmy Stewart from Compass, who's going to provide an overview for us of the FSS Compass model in both the Boston and Cambridge housing authorities.
Great. Well, thank you all for having me today. My name is Jimmy Stewart. I work as Chief Development Communications Officer for a nonprofit organization based in Boston and Philadelphia called Compass Working Capital, or Compass generally for short. So the organization for about 17 years has been really focused on savings and asset building as a pathway to opportunity and out of poverty for families with low incomes, and really just sort of that piece as a kind of missing link in how we think about or address poverty in our social safety net, public welfare systems. We've always been really focused on serving women in particular, Black and Latinx women who are raising children, and some of the interventions that we focused on we really feel like can be tools in a broader toolkit around narrowing racial and gender wealth gaps as well. We have a heavy emphasis on financial coaching, which I'll talk about more in the context of our FSS model, but really trying to think about an approach that is client-centered, trying to combine access to or support around financial content and decision-making. So the hard stuff like credit, debt, savings, reaching goals like home ownership, planning for retirement, education, with the kind of softer encouragement, support, accountability, belief type partnership and different kinds of service coordination. And then we've always been interested in pairing coaching with some sort of meaningful opportunity for families to build savings or assets. And that's why for the last 10 years, we've been laser focused on FSS. We really think there's no other program like it in the country to have an embedded and savings opportunity that is so highly scalable and externally funded. So like was just mentioned, you know, we see a huge opportunity here in terms of the estimated number of FSS eligible households. So households in HCV, public housing, or PBRA who are not on a fixed income is around, we think, about 2.2 million right now. And the most recent numbers from HUD are that about 65,000 of them, or less than 3%, are participating in FSS. There have been real pockets of innovation and excellence, I think, across the country in terms of individual housing authorities working on the program. Certainly some folks I know who are on this call are part of this group. But I think generally there's a sense of sort of underutilization or under optimization of the program that we're really interested in working with others to change. And I think the good news is that we've been able to rally some really great partners, philanthropy, and gradually government as well, around just a more expansive vision for what FSS can mean in the context of housing assistance and in terms of fighting poverty in general. So just to talk a little bit about what we do, we partner actually with a couple groups who I know are part of this meeting, Cambridge Housing Authority and Boston Housing Authority in Massachusetts. And so we've developed and utilized a model for FSS that is more focused on this idea of financial coaching and asset building, as opposed to the more maybe traditional service coordination approach. So really trying to dig deep with families around their financial goals and where they're trying to get to in terms of increased financial security. So we have a team of coaches who work one-on-one with residents in the programs. We manage marketing and outreach, we do enrollment, and we do the service delivery, the coaching. And then our partners, of course, still play a really integral role. They manage the escrow accounts, plus a range of other supports, collaboration, leadership, in order to really make sure that the program is a success. So like I mentioned, we've worked with CHA since 2012. Technically, I think we would not say that CHA's is an FSS program. It's more FSS-like. It's a family stability and savings, or FSS plus is what we've called it since 2012. It started from new in 2012. One of the really interesting things with CHA is we ran a 3-year pilot of an opt-out approach to FSS, so defaulting households at 2 public housing developments into the savings component, and seeing whether that could increase uptake and success in the program. And I'll talk more about that in a minute. And then we're in the process now with CHA of introducing some new program kind of structure and approach to the escrow account that's really interesting that CHA has been spearheading, which is exciting. And then also Boston Housing Authority, BHA. I know I saw David on the call a minute ago. We started working with BHA in 2019. The big focus has been increasing enrollment. We've quadrupled, I think, David, enrollment in the program in the last 2 years. Our target is to reach 2,000 BHA households by sometime next year, which would take you all from being, we think, about the 47th to one of the 10 largest FSS programs in the country. Just so folks are familiar, we also have a major partnership in Philadelphia with the Housing Authority there. We work with a couple other providers in the Boston area. And then FSS has become more recently available to folks in the multifamily space. So we work with a couple of larger owners, Preservation of Affordable Housing, or POA, on the nonprofit side, and then wind companies on the for-profit side, and are continuing to explore how to expand uptake in that market as well. We've done a lot of work around evaluation and impact, which I'm happy to talk more about if there's questions, but just in the interest of time, just want to talk about a couple of things. We've been, my colleague Marquita Morris-Louis, who some folks may have heard from or met before, is our Chief Strategy Officer, soon to be CEO. We've been connecting recently with Janelle and Josh just to talk a little bit more about some of the work we're doing on a field building and policy level, and where there might be opportunities for more kind of collaboration with CLAFA and with your membership. We do a lot of field building work as well. We run a national kind of learning and community building platform for FSS practitioners called Compass FSS Link. I believe a few of you are members. It's a really great resource, I think, particularly for frontline staff who are running or managing FSS programs. I think one of the things the program has sort of suffered from is a lack of guidance, training, robust support, and just kind of camaraderie among practitioners to run programs and think about how to improve services and learn from each other. And so that's what FSS Link is designed to do. And we also run a biannual national FSS conference, which we'll be doing again in 2022. Time is collapsing with the pandemic. So on the policy level, we have coordinated a coalition for a few years. It first came together around multifamily eligibility for FSS, but now we're several years in with both multifamily and PHA organizations at the table, and some other folks just generally who are all interested in expanding the scope and impact of the program. Trying to grow the pie of funding for all to benefit. I think going back to this question around why is FSS not reaching more families, fundamentally more dollars for the program should or could mean that more coordinators can be hired and more families can be served. And so there's a basic kind of equation there. And then of course, there was authorizing legislation that we all helped to push through back in 2018, which is bringing some changes to the program that should help to sort of streamline and improve services for providers and participants. We're also starting to talk about FY23. We've seen Congress consistently increase funding for the last few years, which has been great. We'd love to see that keep going. And I think one of the things we were talking about with Janelle is as Congress and the administration consider or push for increased housing assistance overall, could FSS funding and therefore the program sort of scale alongside that. And then there is a question too for us, something that we've been talking about, and I know there are different points of view here, and valid concerns around this, but the performance standards or measures piece that HUD has been working on for a few years. For us, the interest is really, how can we direct or give HUD the ability to direct some of these new dollars for FSS towards programs that are growing, that are providing a high quality of service to their residents. And then the last thing I know, maybe just to preview, and I can talk about more again, is this idea of opt-out. The broad question that we're wrestling with is how do we expand the program's reach? And one thing that we've talked about and experimented with, like I mentioned in Cambridge, is making FSS the account piece, the escrow account, the opportunity to build savings when you increase your income, making that more of a default for households who are eligible, and then thinking about coaching or service coordination as something that's optional and therefore doesn't necessarily have to be resource intensive to the same degree as managing accounts for a large number of families. A lot of where we're taking cues from, or folks think of the success of employer-sponsored retirement plans and that shift to opt out in order to increase participation. I just want to be really clear, like this is not something that we expect or are pushing for HUD or anybody to flip a switch on. We know this requires a lot more testing and learning and kind of tool building, but that's something we're interested in doing. It's something we're exploring in Boston with BHA. And I think there are some things that will need to shift on the kind of the regulatory or the policy side in order to create more space for that further innovation. But the vision is imagine a day, at least us, imagine a day when the opportunity to build savings is just part and parcel of how we deliver housing assistance nationally. And I know that's a big and ambitious and kind of out there thing, but that's the world we're trying to build towards. So I'll stop there, Janelle. I don't know if it's helpful to talk about anything else specifically, or if folks have questions.
Yeah, I think that was great. And thank you so much for that overview. Yeah, any questions anyone has, I'm gonna volunteer David and maybe Hannah as well, if you have any perspectives on your agency's participation as well.
Yeah, sure. So I'll just say that from the BHA's perspective, when I came into the role that I did in 2017, late 2017, we had a long running FSS program, but it seemed like it was kind of in some ways limping along. And I think the BHA hadn't really dedicated a lot of resources to really building up those, the financial coaching role with internally. And so I just, we just thought we could do better. And so, Compass had been out there in Boston working with a number of different regional housing authorities. And so the opportunity to partner with them was, we jumped at it. And what's been great is that we at the BHA, we haven't had to focus on the coaching aspect and all the tools that really, can be most beneficial in terms of economic mobility. We've left that to Compass's expertise, and they've, in many ways figured out how to scale, the role of the FSS coordinators. And so, yeah, we have grown dramatically, especially over the past year, even with all of the, COVID waivers and the everybody being remote. We've done a lot of work around the marketing of FSS and how we communicate what FSS is and the specific language. And we found that a lot of families are just passing over an opportunity just because they don't understand it or it's not a required thing. And then when they are explained actually that they can build an escrow account and really don't have to do much except earn more, get more earned income, then it's a huge benefit. And especially during COVID, when so many families were and individuals were losing jobs, and then that's like a perfect time for them to enroll in FSS. So I think it's been great working with the Compass team and just kind of thinking about these issues and how to really have the most effect on families and have the broadest effect. And we initially started in our leased housing, just in our voucher program, and I think we're already over 1,000 enrollments, and now we're moving on to some of our public housing developments on the family side. And so it's been really exciting, and it's been one of the highlights of my work so here at the BHA. And I actually, just like hearing those success stories from families is really what I enjoy most about doing this work. So just knowing that, there are going to be more success stories from all the work we're doing is exciting to me and exciting to the staff. So yeah, that's kind of, that's a brief overview of the work and kind of what I think about it. But happy to take any other questions or.
Definitely, thanks. And Hannah, did you have any other than good remarks for for the work that's going on in your community? Any lessons learned? I am curious, David. I had a question about some of the targeting. You mentioned marketing and thoroughly explaining the program. Are there any other lessons learned in terms of increasing participation that we can share?
Well, the one thing that was most beneficial was to take some liberties with the HUD forms and format, and we incorporated them to our online recertification forms. We've been willing to take some things that maybe are something that we would say maybe we would beg for forgiveness later because we've kind of taken some things out of their HUD formal format to make them just a little bit more presentable to the client. And we've used, instead of calling it FSS, we call it, earn more, save more. We kind of just present things in very simple terms so that it's just really clear what we're doing. But then, and some people are now, because we've incorporated it into our regular paperwork, they're signing up for FSS and then they have no idea what they've done until they get a follow-up communication saying, I did what? And so, some of that strategy has really worked well. And then once we get a chance to explain it, they either are, oh, that's great, that sounds good, or they say, oh, it's not for me. So, and we've been doing some surveys around, why people don't want to do it. If they're not working right now or they don't see themselves working, then it's maybe not good for them. And so, and we've tried to just keep it, we haven't, we really nailed the whole program, even disabled and elderly families, even though like they're not really workable, just to kind of for our own, concerns internally. But, we've also done targeted mailings to folks who have recently lost their jobs, just to focus on those to maximize the potential escrow building effect of the FSS. And I think, another thing that's maybe a lesson learned, or it's just that really it's an ongoing discussion. And I see it actually in some of the legislation that's been proposed is this kind of, there's the FSS program that's, you know, building escrow, and then there's the kind of soft services that, you know, the referrals that people can get, and, you know, the goals are not always financial. But I think here at the BHA, we think that the financial aspect of FSS is really the most powerful, and it's actually the most, we're able to serve the most families with escrow accounts, rather than, you know, the kind of really detailed other services that might be able to be provided, but really not internally. We're just referring those kinds of things out. So we're really focused on, you know, building the financial capacity of our families and our residents. And so please stop me from, I'll just babble on forever. So, but yeah.
Thank you. That was helpful. Hannah, I'll come back to you, but I just want to put the question out. I'm going to put in the chat if there are any concerns about CLAFA supporting an opt-out provision or proportionate increases of the FSS program commensurate with the expansion in the voucher program. I would say probably that, but I just want to make sure we don't have any strong opinions as well. And if you do have any strong opinions, you can always contact me directly. All right, if Hannah, you had anything to say, we can do that. And then I had a quick member poll that I'll make really fast so we don't dig too far into the schedule.
Yeah, I know we're running short on time, so I'll keep my remarks short, but I echo everything that David said. You know, I think we're coming up on our 10-year anniversary of working with Compass at the CHA. And so I've been here for about 6 of those years, and prior to that, worked with Compass at some other agencies. So very familiar with them. I would say the only thing I would add, well, I guess to echo what David said about, you know, sort of making it your own program, and to the extent able, I mean, we've been fortunate to be MTW, so we have actually called it something different since the get-go. I think Financial Stability and Savings Plus. So it's still FSS, but it stands for something different. But I like David's idea of sort of just completely, you know, changing the name, using unique forms, things like that. The other thing that we used our MTW authority to do recently is basically steal an idea from Fairfax County. I don't know if Amy is on this call, but we liked their idea of how they did escrow, and so we decided to copy it. Basically, instead of escrowing based off of where you go from your baseline, you escrow based off of what you're earning, regardless of what you had when you started the program. So it's bands. You know, if your earned income is between 10,000 and 15,000, you escrow this amount. So it's just a chart, and the participants very clear, you know, if this is what I'm earning, this is what I'll escrow. So it's not always being measured against that baseline. And the reason we liked that and decided to go with it for new enrollees is because there was sort of a disincentive for our higher income families to enroll if they already had higher income. And those were the folks that we felt, you know, maybe the most likely to benefit in some ways from, you know, graduating with 25,000 of escrow. You know, if you have 20,000 in income and 20,000 of escrow, you know, you still might be out of reach for purchasing a home, for example. Not that that's the only goal that people have, but if you have, you know, 100,000 in income and 20,000 in escrow, it might, you know, go a longer way towards some of your goals. So we didn't want there to be a disincentive for our higher income households to enroll and be able to escrow, you know, large amounts in the program. So we just started that a few months ago. And, you know, people seem excited about it, and just, you know, props to Compass for sort of taking that idea, embracing it, and helping us, you know, roll it out and market it to participants. I think we're gonna, you know, hopefully see some success with that model. Now, that said, you know, we are able to do that through MTW flexibility, but, you know, as with anything, you know, it's nice to be able to make recommendations to HUD based on, you know, real data and things we've seen with the program, if there are things that they'd like to roll out, you know, in the regs as well.
Great, thank you. Are there any questions, concerns? All right, Maria, if you're good, I'm gonna put up our quick poll. All right, so a part of every one of our meetings, I'm going to do a little bit more data collection as a part of it, but I realize it can be a little bit challenging with such a large group to get information directly from. So I'm going to start using these polls. This is my first time doing this, so we'll see how it goes. So I'm going to launch this. We'll leave it up for about a couple minutes. Please do answer the quick questions, and no worries about identifying yourself. Apparently, I should be able to pull a report. So if there is follow-up necessary, I will reach out to you directly. Can everyone actually see the poll? Okay, good. All right, I think we have almost everyone. I'll give it one more minute if you all are still thinking. And then I'll hand it back over to you, Maria. Okay, I think we're good. I'm gonna go ahead and end this poll. See how successful I am and share results just so you all see it. So question about PBV voucher utilization, that has been an ongoing question, particularly with upcoming development projects with Build Back Better investments. We're trying to get a pulse of where our members are in terms of their PBV utilization rate. And it looks like quite a few of you are using greater than 20% with those exception units, a pretty decent amount within 15 to 20%. Glad to hear no increased HCV terminations due to program compliance. We'll continue to keep pulse on that. I am a little concerned with that as we return to normal operations. I'm sure you guys are as well, with families that we're catching up on EIVs and how that's going to potentially impact program compliance. And then finally, it looks like about almost half and half of you have observed recent challenges retaining existing HCV landlords. We're going to talk a little bit about that landlord outreach at our next EHV working group, but that's something I want to continue the conversation going with this group on how to both retain and recruit HCV landlords. So with that, thank you so much, and I'll hand it off to you.
Thanks, Janelle. That poll was fun. Okay, so our last and sometimes favorite is what's happening in your community. So we'll open it up for you to share.
Anything fun going on in your communities? Anything challenging going on in your communities? I'm sure there's challenges.
In the spirit of the conversation over owner recruitment, we recently were awarded a JPAL grant. And so we'll be working with UC Berkeley to study different marketing techniques to owners that are not currently engaged with the program. That hopefully, we found out yesterday that we did get the funds to do the project, and Berkeley is asked to be able to scale it to a larger study after this initial study. And so we'll happily share the results once we have that. And so we're excited to see what we can learn from it.
Yeah. Thank you, Brandon. In terms of landlord recruitment, we engaged similar but different, a marketing firm, and they're doing a survey in our community. They've reached out to over 5,000 landlords, both who are participating in our program and those that are not. And they'll be able to help us create kind of an outreach plan, and we'd be happy to share that as well. Any others?
I'll just say for King County Housing Authority, I'm sure everyone knows that we're going through a transition as our executive director, Stephen Norman, is retiring. So we're doing large transitions with our leadership team as well. So we're going through that, and really focusing on EHV has been the breath of, of our agency. So that's just our update.
Thanks, Pam. We're sad about Stephen, Pam.
Well, Maria, I'll share that, you know, I raised in the chat the issues with capacity and staffing earlier. So I'm sort of trying to lead an effort with our rent assistance directors to do kind of an internal needs assessment, right? As we've added on work expectations for that group of staff, which is about 30 staff, and will expand, right? Per the conversation up front and Steve's information. You know, like we've asked them to do increased equity work, to focus on more phone calls, more direct outreach, and they're stressed, and I'm not sure the caseloads are at the right level. And so we're just doing a lot of work to ask them what their days look like and what they need, or what they need. And my sense is we'll probably expand that department and increase compensation. So just another sort of nudge that, you know, compensation for folks is becoming a tension point for us, and we're doing what we can to figure out what is important to our staff.
Quick question, Ian, what are your caseloads? I know we're looking at that coming 2022 as our staff, or our caseloads are at 535, 550 plus.
Yeah, ours are below 5. I would say 450. So that is all, and we made sort of like promises to staff years ago around some tech tweaks that we would do that would make that more palatable. And then those weren't integrated. So so I understand that we are below most of the industry, and yet I'm still seeing some issues there.
Thank you for sharing.
And you know, honestly, I'll also defend our staff in that, you know, we get put in these really tough positions where we, because of admin fees and overall funding, we ask staff to do like an impossible job, or it just is reflected in terms of quality, right? Because you can't ask staff to call everyone back if they have, right, that level of caseload, et cetera.
And Pam and Ian, what to ask about what, again, every time I talk to a different housing authority, everyone has a different idea of what a caseload is. So what actions do the particular staff have or do for those particular caseload counts?
So for those caseloads, they do the annual recertifications, movers, and any terminations, basically from the time they lease up to the time they go off.
Okay.
And same with us.
And interims.
So when I hear your numbers, again, ours is significantly lower for our staff, and they, of course, feel it's extremely too high. And historically, it's lower than what it's been historically. But so knowing that there's, you know, anywhere from 150 to 200 in a caseload count difference, but this goes to, I think, the whole thing about staff retention right now and the issues about the great mass exodus, and you know, that I think what we run up against is I don't see that there's any data that supports that it's the work. For the most part, it's this idea that somehow or another, what's happening in the world and all the crap that we're all feeling, somehow or another work's going to fix that. Or that work is the central place where the stress is generated, because understandably, I mean, it's not necessarily what you want to be doing always, but it's what you have to do. And so I think it's working against the psychology of what's happening right now. And the levers that you want to pull aren't necessarily going to solve the real issue. And that's where I get stuck. I think that some of the things that we've done, we set in motion things that staff had said were problems, we've addressed, and it hasn't changed people's general feeling. And so I don't think the solutions are going to come from some of the things. Now, it doesn't mean that all of it, you don't do any of it. Clearly, you know, sometimes the perception is important, but I feel like we're up against this larger, and I really would love to hear what other people, and I know we don't have time on this call, but love to hear what other people really think they can do from the psychological nature of this employment battle that we're all finding ourselves in.
I would agree with Brandon, and we looked at, Ian, we would love to hear more about your needs assessment on staffing. We've also tried to restructure departments, splitting out the waiting list so it's more centralized and doing full caseload management instead of specialized duties. And I agree with you, Brandon, it goes back to staff are still, as much as we try to change things, and it still comes down to we only have this amount of money in that admin fee bucket, and how do we stretch that as much as we can? So I think this would be a great topic for some session. I don't know what, but
I found at the BHA, at the Boston Housing Authority, I mean, staff have just appreciated any flexibilities we're able to give around, whether it's around hours or days in the office, or just kind of really just trying to be more flexible than we've been in the past. And I think that's been it seems like that's what folks are looking for. We're in the office, we're allowed to be out 2 days a week here, but when we get applicants coming to apply, that's always the question. And again, the financial cap's going to be there for us. We can't pay huge salaries, but I think the more flexible we can be around, work hours and consideration of families and things like that, I think that's, a positive tool to recruit. But it really has been, it's been a tough 18 months or so to get good hires, and it doesn't seem to be, the market doesn't seem to be changing. I thought it would be turned around a little bit and people would be looking for jobs, especially with the benefit packages that we can offer. But we haven't been, it's been tough.
We actually had I'm sorry, I'm just gonna take one more minute. I'm sorry. We actually had a call yesterday with executive directors talking about COVID-19 and vaccine mandates. And one of the things that came up on that call, and I'm sorry, I don't have it in my notes in front of me, but one housing authority actually brought in a psychologist to meet with the staff to talk about their apprehensions to getting a vaccine and any questions, concerns, things like that. And they were able to submit questions anonymously, and they found that was helpful to get their vaccine mandates. I'm just thinking that might be something we could explore for future topics to talk about for bringing in your agency, because mental health is, there's definitely an appreciation for the need among staff. And we've been hearing the bell ringing about staff retention, salaries, and things of that sort. So with that, I'm going to end that comment.
Thank you. Thanks, Janelle.
I know we're doing, I will just add, this is a question on everybody's mind. As Janelle said, we had a call yesterday on employee vaccine mandates, but the other recurring theme here is recruitment and retention of staff. And I think we will need to focus on that, both on the resource end and what other things we can do as an industry, and what the latest thinking is on supporting folks. But this is definitely a recurring theme. And the other point that Ian made in the chat about the admin fee, we're starting to see a turn here and understanding that it needs to be more robust if we're going to deliver, and particularly on the service side and the navigation and landlord incentive side. So I think this is going to be a big challenge as the program expands. But we definitely want to keep our eye on this.
Thanks, Cindy. Okay, so sorry, we're 2 minutes over time, but hopefully the meeting was beneficial for you. Thank you so much for sharing. I know we lost some people along the way, but this is always beneficial for me as well. So thank you as well to the CLAFA team for all of the great information that you include, and the organization prior to the meetings. It's extremely helpful. So I hope that everyone has a great day. Thank you for joining us. Bye.
Bye, everyone. Have a good one.